I'm Peter Chung, and I'm here with Mr. Larry Novak, a structural engineer who worked on the Burj Khalifa in Dubai. So why are you here today talking with students?
I'm glad you asked that question. It's very important to reach out to the next generation to inspire them to study math, science, and of course engineering. Because the next generation really have an opportunity right now to make a difference. Topics such as sustainability, green design, making the best use of what we have to go forward is not only good for us, it's good for the next generation and even their children. And not only is it a good, it's a must today. I'm sure you're learning about sustainability yourself in school, and you may now know more than some of your teachers because they did not get it in school. Now's a good chance to learn about a new topic that can make a difference.
Have you seen in your career a switch from maybe going bigger and making things huge to being more sustainable and eco-friendly?
You know, they're not different. You can go big and even be more sustainable. For example, on the case of the Burj Khalifa, Burj Dubai, it is so tall that the top of the building exhibits 7 degrees cooler temperature than the ground. Now, if you're in the desert where this building is, where do you think most of the energy goes into doing for that building?
Cooling.
Cooling. Now you have a choice, grabbing hot air and cooling it or grabbing cool air and cooling it. What's going to take less energy?
Grabbing the cool air.
So just because this building is tall, we can save 20% of the energy on this building.
Wow.
Exactly.
That's very impressive. Were there any other eco-friendly factors that had to be taken into consideration when you were creating the Burj?
That's a good question. We also wanted to salvage a lot of the wastewater, things that get condensate from the air conditioning units. We collect all that water. It's only a lot of drips per room, but there's a lot of rooms, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you collect all those drips at equivalents to 15 Olympic swimming pools of water a year. And it's enough to turn the desert around the building into an oasis.
Wow. And is that what that pool of water is around the Burj, or how is that filled?
That's filled with this water, and that uses dancing showers, kind of like the Bellagio in Vegas. It's a very fun place to go.
Was there anything special that you had to take into consideration when you were creating a building that was so tall?
Well, that's kind of the nature of what engineers do. A lot of times in science, what we do is we're plotting something going along, right? And when you have two endpoints and you try to figure out what's in between, that's called interpolation. Okay? And you feel kind of safe with interpolation because even if the curve's not perfectly linear, you're going to be kind of close, right?
Mm-hmm.
But whenever you go outside of those known points, you're extrapolating. And then if the curve goes up or the curve goes down, you can get very different answers. And so anyone who does the world's tallest, the world's longest, the biggest, fill in your own X, is extrapolating. Going to the moon is extrapolating. Using what we know to do something we don't know. And that is always, I don't want to say risky, but more questionable. Engineers work very hard. They don't go home and forget what they're doing. They lose sleep over what they do. They are always thinking because they want to make sure things are safe and still exciting.
What was your specific role in the creation of the Burj Khalifa?
I was the lead structural engineer on the building, so my job was to make it stand up. And that's not an easy task. Some of the original concepts of the building, it wasn't a case of would the structure cost more or less. It was a case of would it work or would it not work.
How tall is the structure, actually? Let's start with that.
For the longest time, I was not allowed to say. It was a well-guarded secret. You could not even find on the internet. You'd find the wrong answer. It is so tall, it's like taking the Sears Tower in Chicago and the John Hancock in Chicago and stacking the two. This is not one-footmanship. It's not like 1 foot longer boat. This is a very large extrapolation.
So with a building so tall, what did you have to take into consideration, such as wind? Did it have to be shaped any differently than a normal building?
That's a very good question. There are forces like wind and earthquakes that affect the building greatly. Certainly its own self-weight even. Wind, imagine if you will, you had a boat, right? A boat's got a bow and a stern, right? The bow is pointed, the stern tends to be straight, right? The boat's got a reverse in it, right, gear? Does the boat go very well in reverse?
No.
Does it go really well forward?
Yeah.
You point the bow into the direction you're going, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the building, the Burj, is triangular shaped. We pointed the triangular into the prominent winds. Like here in the Chicago area, the prominent wind is from the west. So you point the building into the prominent wind, and that reduces the forces significantly on the building versus against one of the flat faces. And even in terms of structural, I've got myself here a little kid's toy. You know, it's the old magnets with the ball bearings. Probably had one when you were a kid. I'm going to ask you a question. How many triangles do you see?
4.
Very smart. He found the one on the bottom. Some people say 3. I am impressed. Good job. And this is a very strong structure. Can I ask you very carefully, take your thumb and squash this thing. Literally fail this structure. That took a little bit of force, didn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, put it back together. Getting pretty good at it. It used to take me a while. My son's better at it than I am. Now what I want to do is remove one of the legs, but I'm not going to take a vertical. That's too obvious, right? I'm going to take away one of the bases. It still looks like a pyramid, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Can you squash that pyramid now? Easier or harder?
Much easier.
The key to this is you have to complete all the triangles. And that's part of engineering. Trying to do it with the least amount of materials, but still have a complete element.
Did there need to be any special precautions with evacuatory procedures, or what happens in an emergency in the building?
A lot of that type of stuff is very different overseas than U.S. One of the things we did on that building is about several places up the building we have areas of refuge where you can come down a few stories and stay there in a concrete no-fire zone. Even some of the elevators are designed to operate in a fire. But certainly one needs to think about it, because in high-rise buildings historically, if you had a fire, you evacuated that floor, the 2 floors above and the floor below, because fires go up, and people stayed on their floors, okay? Post 9/11, if you hear of a fire and they say, stay where you are, what are you really going to do?
Go straight for the stairs.
Stay for the stairs and straight out the building. So, you know what? Who's coming up the stairs to fight the fire?
The firemen.
What do they got on their backs?
Oxygen tanks.
Yeah. So, and you're now coming down when you were originally going to stay. So stair corridors need to be much wider than they used to be. People understand that there must be much more egress and ingress through the stairways than there ever was. And continuous stairways are very, very important, because if you get out of a staircase, you get lost, right? You want to stay where you are and continue down. So a lot of that stuff is very, very important as we go forward. And thinking about that is not just engineering, it's architecture, it's mechanical, electrical, plumbing, all the disciplines combined. And it's a lot bigger picture than one person.
So thank you for joining us here today. Do you have any last words for our viewers or students?
That's a good question. I mean, why did I come here today? I was invited by the excellent staff here. And one of the reasons is, if I can make an impact on one student's life, that would be great. But I want to make sure people know that, you know, think about what kind of professions, what kind of degrees, what do you want to do with your life? And, you know, sometimes engineers are just big kids with big expensive toys. But we can make a difference in people's lives. And that message is important to get out there. And that's really what we want to do. I mean, you know, we may say, oh, I want to make a lot of money. But, you know, when at the end of the day, it's how you feel when you go home at the end of the day. And I feel really good when I go home at the end of the day with what I do. And I hope others feel the same way.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.